On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audio-visual device you choose to use, welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 3, created January 19th, 2022. I'm John in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil. He's about to be on the road on his way to Green Bay as well. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight, going with the brown beverage, Angel's Envy.
I spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania tomorrow, and specifically, I am drinking a Yuengling Hershey's Porter, which is about as Pennsylvania as it gets.
And I made myself a whiskey sour. Not so much sour, so it's more of a whiskey. All right, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter. We're at Green Bay Chat, and Facebook at the GBC Podcast. Green Bay Chat is what GBC stands for. Our topics this time around, we're going to look at Wild Card Weekend and our picks that we had. The divisional round opponent coming up. We've got a Packers player of the past that kind of ties into our view of special teams this year. We'll look at the head coach openings, the divisional round predictions. We've got a story of Packers history. And you know what? We're going to talk about some things to do in Green Bay when it's cold, because it will be cold this weekend. All right, you guys. We made our picks last week, 6 picks, 6 games for Wild Card Weekend. John, that's me. I was 5-1 in those picks. Neil and Jeff, you guys did quite well as well. 4-2. You were above par on the betting line, but for Super Wild Card Weekend, it really wasn't very super. Maybe 2 competitive games out of the 6, but of the 6 teams that won, who do you guys like? Jeff, who impressed you there?
Well, unfortunately, San Francisco impressed me. Maybe they impressed me less than Dallas disappointed. I don't know. It was, we will talk more about San Francisco later. Otherwise, I thought the Bills, they came out, they were very, very motivated. Fans were nuts. It was a Saturday night and in Buffalo, and you know what? They left happy. They may not have left at all. Who knows? Lots of tables were probably broken. And, I think the Bills, though, overall, and that's kind of a sneak peek to my pick as well. Coming up for this weekend, but I'm all about the Bills Mafia. Full disclosure, like to see a Packer Bill Super Bowl.
Oh, Jeff giving us a peek insight.
Actually, that's not a peak. That's just like a gaping chasm.
It's right there. Neil, what'd you like?
So I'm going to go with what I was unimpressed by, which was the Dallas Cowboys. It was said, for those of us who are Packers fans, we're used to Mike McCarthy figuring out a way to fuck up in the playoffs. And that was just a perfect Mike McCarthy game in the playoffs. And San Francisco looked good. They certainly did a lot of things well. We'll talk more about that later, but it was more the Cowboys looking like the Cowboys as they have in the playoffs the last decade plus. Specifically, we've got a situation where now Dak Prescott and Tony Romo started out their first 6 years in Dallas with a 1-3 record in the playoffs. It's the same thing. You've got the same owner. Things are never going to change. And I'm with Jeff, though. Buffalo looked incredible. Josh Allen was out of this world. They could not do anything wrong. They were perfect at everything other than extra points in that game. Cincinnati was the other team that I really came out of the weekend impressed by. I mean, obviously we saw them in Cincinnati earlier this year, but that offensive connection showed me something. Specifically, Joe Burrow showed me that he is a quarterback who absolutely is somebody who's going to be a player in the playoffs this year and in years to come.
With that said, all of the favorites except one team won last week. That's the 49ers. I got that pick right, so I wasn't disappointed in the Cowboys at all. I said McCarthy was going to shit the bed, and he did, and they did, and the Niners won that game. The other one, though, the non-upset that Neil and I picked was the Patriots, and Buffalo did come out, and I think we were just expecting Belichick to just do Belichick magic, but boy, did Buffalo just say, forget it. We're not even going to mess around, and they didn't, and they played a near-perfect football game in every aspect, and it was quite scary to watch. But a great weekend for the Buffalo Bills. But with all that said, let's talk about how things broke down and who the winners were and why that 49ers Cowboys game was important, because our divisional round opponent this weekend, Saturday night in Green Bay, 7:15 kickoff, the San Francisco 49ers come to town. Neil, you're coming to town.
I am coming down.
What are you looking forward to in that game?
What am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to the Packers showing up in a playoff game against the 49ers, because that has not happened in a long, long time. This is a situation where we just have gotten used to, whether it's Colin Kaepernick, whether it's the San Francisco running game, whatever happens, we're not performing. Rodgers may do okay, but we're not doing enough as far as winning the game is concerned. And I want to see a total team effort from the Packers this weekend. I want to see us control San Francisco's running game. I want us to prevent Aaron Rodgers from getting sacks. I want to see us move the ball and do it consistently. I want us to see a reversal of what happened in the Colin Kaepernick game. Instead of us falling way behind and maybe catching a few points up, I want to see us taking a huge lead right off the bat and make it a truly raucous night in Green Bay, just like that raucous night in Buffalo. I don't know that we'll see dildos on the field in Green Bay, but we're going to see some people who are animated in Green Bay for a Saturday night game for sure.
What you're saying is you want Green Bay to play the game Buffalo played last week.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I think that's going to be the key. I think Green Bay is going to have to play pretty much a perfect game. And that's not something, unfortunately, that we've seen. That whole, hey, let's play 4 quarters of this same game, a good 4 quarters, right? As we've kind of discussed amongst ourselves, not on this medium, but there's the first quarter kind of snoozing a little bit, second quarter, hammer down, and third quarter, well, okay, fourth quarter, oh my God, we got to hang on. Enough of this shit. I mean, we need a Bills-esque performance Saturday night, make it clear to the league and to the team. I think the Packers could really use that just as a confidence builder. I think that they're plenty confident, but just to say, okay, yes, we can actually put this together, and then not to hopefully peak then either, to bring that through the division championship to the NFC championship. Because again, you're going to have a late night game for the NFC championship. Thanks, John. And so, it's going to be a late game. It's a Sunday, granted. But for Green Bay, that doesn't mean anything because it'll be just like a Saturday night anyway. And so I think, that's the mindset, and that's the way the fans are going to react, regardless of what the temperature is. That's what you're going to get in Green Bay.
I think the biggest factor that's affected this Packers team probably for the last 10 years is speed, and speed specifically on
or lack thereof. And Deebo Samuel is a guy who scared me back in week 3. Now, he didn't dominate in week 3, but when you look at the way they've used him as a running back in the last 2 games, in particular last week, that defense is going to have to be ready to contain his speed, and Devondre Campbell is going to have a Wayne Simmons, George Kuntz kind of game in the middle there, and take care of George Kittle as well. And I think that the defense is really what has to step up. The offense is going to take care of itself. The weather to me is a non-story. And yeah, Neil, it's going to be cold. Make sure you pack an extra pair of mittens and all that good stuff. But the cold's going to affect both teams. Yep.
Everybody's going to be cold. The fans are going to be cold. The interesting thing about it, the choice was a Saturday game or a Sunday game. Well, Saturday is actually the warmer of the 2 days. We've got a daytime high temperature predicted of 22 degrees, but that'll be dropping quickly after sunset. Sunday high of 10 degrees with wind chills below 0. I am thankful we aren't going to be sitting out there watching the game on Sunday. But yeah, that cold temperature, I think Aaron Rodgers talked about it in the press conference today. The ball does funny things. Everybody's got to be prepared for it. It's going to affect everybody. Is it a factor? Yes, but it's an equal factor. And it's Green Bay. We have the home field advantage, which is nice.
Exactly. Yep. I'd much rather it was in Green Bay than certainly in San Francisco. But you know what? And maybe for Aaron Rodgers, for all the goofy shit that's gone on this year with him, he hasn't beaten San Francisco in the playoffs. As you can see, he's 0-3. He's due. I mean, come on. I mean, if nothing else, to get that monkey off his back, like I said, there's so many factors at play here, and hopefully that they're the better prepared, better playing team. And if they play their best game, they're not going to lose. And then so the matter is, okay, if they don't, then what happens? Well, we'll see.
Well, I mean, if you look at the game from week 3, right, there's some interesting elements of that really point well to us, right? We went up 17-0. Crosby had a 3 field goals, including 2 that were over 50 yards. Rodgers was 23 of 33 with 261 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones ran the ball well. We won the turnover battle. We had more sacks by a 4-to-1 ratio. There were only 2 things that really hurt us as far as the game. One is that we had 7 penalties for 87 yards. And the other is we allowed a 68-yard kickoff return. But I mean, we were a better team by most of the objective stats of the game. And yes, San Francisco was not at their best. And I think that's the one thing I worry about is this overconfidence that while we controlled them in week 3, while San Francisco stunk in week 3, they've won 9 of their last 10 games. So they're a different team now than they were in week 3. And so don't take too much out of the history, but we're a better team than we were in week 3 too. AJ Dillon had 6 runs for 18 yards in week 3. I will bet as much money as you want to put up that he will get more than that on Saturday.
I think probably better than 3 yards a carry too.
Yep.
And I think in San Francisco still has Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So he's going to do a Jimmy Garoppolo at least once. He's going to throw some dumbass, good for us, right? He's going to throw the ball up at least once, perhaps more, in that first San Francisco game. He did just that last week, even against the Cowboys. He did that. So he's going to do it again. It looks like he's not at 100%, a sprained throwing shoulder, not ideal. And so I think the defensive backs, they're going to, the defense in general, but especially defensive backs, they're going to have an opportunity at least once, probably multiple times, especially if we can get a good rush with the Smith brothers being back and, put some pressure on Garoppolo. If he gets rattled back there, he's just going to start throwing shit up and our defensive backs will feast.
I mean, I think the thing that worries about me from that perspective is that Garoppolo, he's not a Stafford. I mean, he is capable of making great plays. He had a really great 2-minute drive in the first game against us. So he can play at a very high level. And, I don't think he's as brain farty as Matt Stafford is in particular, but Jeff, you brought up the issue of players that are coming back. So of the players that are coming back, which one do you think is going to have the biggest impact on the game?
Let me think about that for a minute, John.
I think Randall Cobb, and that's the point is, historically speaking, the healthiest teams are who do the best in the playoffs. You can say statistics and everything you want during the regular season. It's the teams that are the healthiest, and the number of players that are back and ready to play. Now, how much rust is there? We don't know. How much are they going to be a factor? But adding Randall Cobb into the offense and the receiver set certainly is going to help on the offensive side. It's going to give Rodgers that confidence. Interesting piece, and we're not going to get into it too much other than saying Kingsley Keke was released from the team today. This happened just a few hours ago before we started here. Nobody knows why. So he's out. But, what's happening on that defense? Well, you're right. Zadarius Smith is back. They're going to have a strong, that 4-person front. Hopefully Whitney Merciless is in there along with Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, and Jair Alexander as a cornerback. Maybe he's playing in the slot because you've got Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes who have been handling the outside on the corners. It'll be great to see. But again, the factor that all of these players are back and ready to play, and this is a healthy team, and all they have to do is win 2 games at home, and everything is good to go from there.
I mean, you brought up the Zadarius Smith, and I think that's the amount of rotation we're going to be able to do in the on the edge. I think is something that's really significant, right? Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary both had 9 and 9.5 sacks on this year without Zadarius Smith as part of the mix, and you allow those guys to tee off and get a little bit of rest and rotation. I think that is a real factor that can make a difference in a playoff game for sure. Right? You need to have those disruptive plays, and those are people that are capable of making the disruptive plays.
And I agree. Like I said, Zadarius Smith, I think, is because he's one of the leaders on the defense anyway. And I think bringing him back in, and we haven't seen a healthy Smith brothers and Rashawn Gary together. I mean, so Gary has made a lot of progress this year, as we talked about in prior episodes. He's made such an impact, and he's still growing into his role. Oh, by the way, now we get an all-pro back. I think that's going to be the key. And again, as I mentioned before, putting pressure on Mr. Garoppolo, I think is going to be huge. It's going to rattle him. And plus then from that speed aspect as well, they're the defensive line is fast as well. Deebo Samuel is otherworldly. but I think if they have to resort to running the ball, we'll see. Kenny Clark hopefully will hold his own in the middle there. I don't know what's going to happen, but if they're putting the ball in Jimmy's hand, I'd rather put the ball in Jimmy Garoppolo's hands because I think our chances with that are much better.
And I think related to that, right? We talk about David Bakhtiari coming back. So David Bakhtiari had 27 snaps in the Detroit game. Josh Myers had 32 snaps in the Detroit game. That's strengthening our line, and giving Aaron Rodgers a little bit more time is something that is absolutely going to help us, right? The San Francisco pass defense is not great, and having a line that Aaron Rodgers feels he can hold the ball a little bit longer for is something that is a real factor that can work in our favor in the game.
We have a lot to look forward to with players that are coming back to the team and what they're going to bring to us for Saturday night. But let's take a look at our Packers player of the past. Neil, who are you concentrating on this week?
So for Packers fans, 1996 is obviously one of the magical years of our life. And a key player in that magic of 1996 was Desmond Howard. And Desmond Howard specifically played a critical role both in the regular season and in the playoffs. In the regular season, he had 3 punt returns for a touchdown, giving us a taste of what he was capable of doing. But when we started the divisional round, playing against San Francisco at home, that was a game that was the entire tone of the game was set by Desmond Howard. And so in the start of the 96 divisional round, San Francisco got the ball first. They went 3 and out. They punted the ball, and Desmond Howard returned for a 71-yard punt return for a touchdown, giving Green Bay an early 7-0 lead. Later in the first quarter, San Francisco had the ball. They had the ball deep in their own territory. And they ended up at the 50. They had to punt from their own 15. They punted the ball 38 yards, and Desmond Howard returned the ball 46 yards. We had the ball at the San Francisco 7-yard line in the first quarter, up 7-0. 2 plays later, Brett Favre to Andre Rison touchdown. The Packers are up 14-0 with very little that the offense has done so far. And that ended up being the theme of the game. We basically set out the lead. We ended up winning 35-14. But it's remarkable. We basically just set the game with Desmond Howard in the first quarter. And from that point on, we're going to run the ball. We're going to pound the ball. I think the most amazing stat, this is the 1996 divisional game. Brett Favre was 11 of 15 for 79 yards with that 1 touchdown to Andre Rison. The Packers only had 15 first downs in the game, but that was the Mike Holmgren approach. We're going to take a lead, and we are going to hold that lead, and we're going to pound the ground. And that's obviously a strategy that worked us all year. And Desmond Howard is the one that started that. We don't get those 2 big punt returns in the first quarter. It's a 0-0 game, and then anything can come into play.
So looking back, the fortunate thing that obviously he did sign with Green Bay before that season, but looking back a little bit into Desmond Howard's past, so the 1992 draft, which was Ron Wolf's first draft, he liked Desmond Howard. Unfortunately, the Washington football team had the number 4 pick and scooped Desmond Howard up with that pick. 1992, they drafted ahead of the Packers. Packers were SOL at the time. So what do? They bided their time and picked him up as a free agent.
And I think related to that, right? It's a magic, right? We Packers fans who were fans in the 90s, we have these incredible thoughts for Desmond Howard, and yet he played 1 full year for us, and that was it. He played 3 years in Washington, 1 in Jacksonville. We signed him after he sort of was considered a bust because he was not this wide receiver that he had been in college. And, as it turns out, he's a special teams wizard. It was incredible.
Even the way Jeff presents it, if Desmond Howard had been drafted by Green Bay, he would have been considered a bust and would not have been on that Super Bowl team had he played the same, had he had the same career. And part of it is Howard, really wanted to be a receiver, a starting receiver. He didn't like the role that he was meant to play. Now, if he could have been talked into being that special teams role player and had every one of his, he played 10 years, 12 years, had all of his years in the league been the same as 1996, you're looking at a Hall of Fame career there. I mean, even just with that 1 season, he becomes the Super Bowl MVP, and he is only one of 4 people to be Super Bowl MVP that have also won the Heisman Trophy. And the others being Roger Staubach, Jim Plunkett, and Marcus Allen. There's 3 Hall of Famers right there, and Desmond Howard. And we look at that 1 year and yeah, I mean, it's like, that's if you could just say, was there a Hall of Fame season right there in 96 for Desmond Howard? There definitely was.
Because yeah, in a small
carried that
sample
special team.
size, in a
Yes.
really small sample size, again, in a role that he did not cherish, he was the number 4 all-time career in punt returns.
For touchdowns.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important. Punt return for touchdowns. Devin Hester had his 14. Obviously, we all know about Devin Hester's magic, but Desmond Howard is number 4 on this list with what is it, 8, I believe.
And
That's incredible.
And you look at the math, the numbers too, right? In the regular season, Desmond Howard had 58 punt returns for 875 yards and 3 touchdowns in the regular season. In addition to a touchdown in the playoff game against San Francisco, in addition to that additional huge return, in addition to obviously his touchdown in the Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, he replicates that magic, and yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. People are saying Devin Hester should be considered for the Hall of Fame. I think that's a load of crap. But if Desmond Howard had done what he did in '96 over a 10-year career and repeated that, he's the first real true return man who's a Hall of Famer.
Great.
Now, unfortunately, we are not blessed with anybody even close to a Hall of Famer on our special teams. We have affectionately dubbed the special teams crew the Asshats, and that is how they have been playing this year. Now, the Asshats actually thwarted a fake punt in Detroit, and that's probably the highlight of the season on the special teams, but how critical. We talked about Desmond Howard. Neil, you alluded to it. It's a divisional playoff game against San Francisco in '96. And then it's his magic in the Super Bowl. How critical, not just as a return person, but in all 4, kick off, kick return, punt team, punt return, to have 11 guys that just play like total shit all the time.
It doesn't matter which unit, it's still 11 guys of shit. So
what is it? Is it coaching? Is it scheme? Is it strategy? Is it because you can't get 11 guys on the same page? Because it's a mishmash of guys for the most part in these roles. It's like, okay, who are the 11 guys that get out there and see? Yeah, you've got your long snapper, you've got your specialist and your punter and your kicker and things like that. But those other guys that are down there, they're supposed to be doing blocking and tackling. And what's going on, Neil? Why can't we get this straight?
I don't know. It's remarkable. And it's remarkable how pervasive the asshattery is. This is like the asshattery of all asshattery. And we talked about, what happened in the first game against San Francisco, but, the game where Jeff coined the term asshats here, he said, I am going to call the special teams, they're not special. We're going to call them the asshats.
Yes, they were no longer the special teams. That was just, I could not put up with week 14 against the Bears, the special teams. That's where the phrase was coined, or the term was coined. They went from the special teams to the asshats. And Neil, why don't you give us some lowlights from that week 14?
So that Bears game. So just to remind you, the Packers beat the Bears 45-30. Rodgers stats: 29 of 37, 341 yards, 4 touchdowns. Dillon, 15 rushes for 91 yards. Adams, 10 receptions, 121 yards. Rasul Douglas had a 55-yard pick 6, right? There's no way you can possibly lose a game when that is your set of statistics.
That's an ass kicking. Except for the
asshats and the asshattery.
And on the defense too, with the pick 6, right? I mean, that's fantastic. However,
and yet what happened on the second drive of the game? Green Bay Packers had a 57-yard Bojorquez punt, 34-yard return that got into Packers territory. A few plays later, the Bears scored a field goal. On the subsequent kickoff to Malik Taylor, he muffs the kickoff, fumbles the ball out of bounds. The Packers start at the 5.
If you just would have let it go, they would have started at the 40. It would have been out of bounds, penalty, would have been all set. And I believe on that drive, the Packers ended up with about 25 net yards, which would have put them in field goal range. But instead, they started at the 5.
Next drive, after the Rasul Douglas pick 6, Mason Crosby kicks the ball out of bounds, giving the Bears the ball at the 40. A few plays later, they score a touchdown. Next time the Packers punt the ball, 97-yard punt return for a touchdown. The Packers were down 24-21. Unbelievable. We allowed a 42-yard kickoff return. Bajorquez had a 22-yard punt later on in the game. And then the killer of it all, after Jeff had termed the team, the special teams, the Asshats, it's a 45-30 game. The Bears have the ball, not a lot of time left. Onside kick. You can't get an onside kick in the year 2021. It's just the rules are such that you cannot recover your own onside kick. And yet the Bears recovered the onside kick. It didn't matter which unit we stunk. I think the only unit that was actually useful in that game was actually Mason Crosby kicking the ball, not on kickoffs, but on extra points and field goals. But
that kept him busy. But man,
but specifically, the Packers are ranked 32 in special teams DVOA. It's not just one game. We've stunk all year on special teams, and it's just a matter of where's the stink going to come from this week, or how many places is the stink going to come from this week? And
but it gets
it's going to come from Kakana, and that's it.
But the other issue is that the Packers special teams, or pardon, the Packers asshats. My bad. Gonna apologize. This has been pervasive for a number of years, and a number of different coaches, asshat coaches as well. So, hopefully, with all the accolades and deservedly so for Matt LaFleur, but God, get an asshat coach so we can call them by their rightful names. The special teams.
I want the anti-asshats.
Exactly. Let's retire the asshat name, please.
So getting a special teams coach to come in will probably help. That's got to be something that's going to help with the special teams. Who knows? We'll wait and see. But talking of coaches, there are 8 head coach vacancies and 4 general manager vacancies across the league. We're not going to get into who's going to end up where, but other than to say our offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, is getting looked at, our quarterbacks coach, Luke Getsy, is getting looked at, and a familiar name, Elliott Wolf, is getting some general manager considerations in the league. However, the question is this process something that needs to be changed? Because you've got these coordinators, they're trying to get ready for an important playoff game, and they're getting distracted by, hey, do you want to be our head coach next season? Neil, how do you feel about that? What are your thoughts there?
I think that no doubt this is a process that needs to be changed, and it works in a couple of different ways. One, obviously, there's the distraction, and that while if you're a Bears or a Vikings general manager executive, you say, well, I'm kind of screwing with the Packers by interviewing their players, and that's the one thing I don't want is for any of our coaches to go to an NFC North team. But in addition, the teams that end up going to the Super Bowl, those coordinators end up doing worse as far as head coaching positions than those who lose out in the championship game. And I think Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City is the perfect example of that. And that, why is Eric Bieniemy not a head coach in the NFL yet? Well, it's partly because when they go to the Super Bowl, the other teams are trying to get their coaching settled before the Super Bowl. And all of a sudden, he's out of, all the other teams have their coaches set by the time he's ready to go and make a commitment. So I think that absolutely, this is a situation where nothing should be done until after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, especially with the Super Bowl getting later and later every year, because the regular season's now over, and yeah, typically, as we'll when we get to our historic segment on Mike Holmgren, you'll see that there was that Mike Holmgren was hired back in early January. As when a lot of coaches were at that time. So that's not the case anymore, like I said, because that was still the regular season this year.
So there's 8 teams that have to worry about their vacancies: Houston, Las Vegas, Jacksonville, Denver, Minnesota, Chicago, Miami, and the Giants. 4 of them looking for general managers: Las Vegas, Minnesota, Chicago, and the Giants. Again, wherever the chips fall, great. Eric Bieniemy deserves a job. Hey, Nathaniel Hackett and Luke Getsy probably deserve a job, but like Neil said, let's not see them in Minnesota or Chicago. So those 8 teams, they just have to worry about filling those head coaches' roles. There's 8 other teams that have to worry about winning this weekend. Now, let's take a look at the divisional round, and we're going to make our predictions on the 4 games. We're going to take them in order, so that means you guys, you got to do your Packers pick right away. So here we go. We're going to start with the first game. It is 3:30 on Saturday. We're already going to be tailgating by the time this game kicks off, but it is.
Where are you tailgating?
Where am I tailgating?
Yeah, I heard something that you might be doing some tailgating.
Oh yes, there's a great tailgate party in Lot 1 at Lambeau Field. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. I'll put a pitch in there for that. All right. So the Cincinnati Bengals are at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are favored by 3.5. They're the 1 seed. They came off the bye this week. Cincinnati looked really good last week. Tennessee should have Derrick Henry back. How much will he play? We don't know. Who are your picks? Jeff, who you like on that one? Bengals, Titans?
Titans. I
Jeff's
got to go with the
going
Titans. They're at home. I think Derrick Henry, even if they use him as a decoy, I mean, at this point, any Derrick Henry is better than no Derrick Henry. The Bengals are scary. This is one where I think it really could go almost either way. If Joe Burrow gets hot, stays hot, there may be, I don't know what the over-under on this game is at this point, but I would take the over because I think this is going to be an offensive. The last team with the ball is probably going to win, but I'm going to go with the Titans.
Jeff, I'm going to go with the Titans, but I'm going to take the under. And it's fundamentally because of the fact that Tennessee's rushing offense obviously gets a lot of accolades, and they absolutely have been incredible as far as how well they're able to move the ball. And having that combination of running backs with Derrick Henry back is obviously huge for them, but their defense is also really good. And they're specifically ranked 6th against the pass. And as much as I love Joe Burrow and the thought of Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase and having this beautiful, sexy football of all this ball movement, I just think Tennessee's going to grind the game out, and they're going to win the game by grinding it on the ground, and they're going to do it by stopping the Cincinnati passing game. I think Joe Burrow down the road is going to be a star in the playoffs. I just don't think it's this year.
So it's unanimous there. I'll take the Titans as well. The Bengals, great story this year. We enjoyed our time in Cincinnati. A lot of good people there. I'm happy for their fans that they got the first playoff win in 30 years. That was great. But it ends there. I think that they were a Jekyll and Hyde team all season long. They even were Jekyll and Hyde in that game. There was a point where you're like, oh my gosh, the Raiders are coming back on this. I think the Bengals will have all they can do to contain, even though it's Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm sorry, not Fitzpatrick.
Wow.
Hey, does it really matter whether it's Tannehill or Fitzpatrick, though? I mean,
Tannehill.
Yeah.
Keep that in, Neil. Don't edit that out. We can make me look foolish every once in a while. It doesn't matter. The Titans are going to go ahead and win that game. Let's move on to the Saturday night game. It is at 7:15. It is in Green Bay. It is the San Francisco 49ers at the Green Bay Packers. We've been talking about it a lot. It's the biggest spread of the 4 games. The Packers are favored by 5.5 at home. The 1 seed versus the 6 seed. Where are we going, Neil?
So when I look at things that I worry about for this game, things that I worry about is the Packers have the fourth worst run defense when you look at their yards per carry that's allowed. I worry about that. I look at the Packers as far as their scoring is concerned. We're only 10th in points scored. We're only 10th in points allowed. And so by Pythagorean expectations, you would expect that the Packers should have been a 10-7 team rather than a 14-3 team. And I think that's where a lot of our consternation this year has been as Packers fans. We've had a lot of close games. We have not had many blowouts. And so, that plus 79 point differential is something that worries me as far as, while we may think that we're better than we are. On the other hand, the Packers have the record for the most consecutive playoff games in which they've scored 20 or more points at 22 games. Second most is 16. We've got all of these players coming back that weren't contributing during the year, and the 49ers are 20th in pass defense. And so although we've had a lot of concern about the 49ers, there are a lot of reasons to be concerned. I think that we're just the better team and we're going to win.
Jeff, where are you going?
Well, I won't be quite as verbose as that. I think if Mr. Bosa can't play, I think that's going to be, even work more to our advantage. Again, if Jimmy Garoppolo is he's certainly dinged up, but I think we're at home. I think Aaron Rodgers just wants to get this over with and get past San Francisco to shut everybody up, to have, hopefully we're looking at a near perfect game here, as Neil alluded to, and as we saw in week 3 this year. Even in an imperfect game, Rodgers only needed 30 seconds, 28 seconds, whatever it was.
37 seconds, yeah.
37. Okay, thank you to draw, for that game winning field goal. we're the Asshats. At that point, we're not the Asshats. And again, Mason Crosby came through huge. And that shot of Rodgers crouched down, and then when the field goal went through, the huge leap into the air, he wants this game. He wants to win this game. And I think Matt LaFleur, it'll be a statement game for him as well to, win in the playoffs. Obviously, there's bigger fish to fry here, but let's just win this and move on.
We all want to win. I'm just putting me down. Packers win. I don't even need a reason. Let's go to Sunday. Sunday at 2:00. The first game of the day, it is the number 4 seed Los Angeles Rams, who we saw Monday night. They are traveling all the way to Tampa. The Buccaneers, the 2 seed, getting another home game. Pretty nice for the 2 seed, getting 2 home games in a row. Buccaneers favored by 3 in this one. And boy, they looked good last week. Both teams looked really good. It's going to be a battle down there in Florida between the Rams and the Buccaneers, but I really think that this is a destiny situation where we're going to get another rematch. I think we're going to get the rematch that we want. Other than that, I'm not putting any reasons down other than to say I think Tampa's the better team, and it was probably determined maybe around week 10, week 12 that just the way it's going to be is Green Bay and Tampa in the NFC Championship game. Neil, who do you like?
So the Rams are extremely tempting, right? They've got OBJ, they've got Cooper Kupp, who had a season that somehow managed to surpass what Devontae Adams did this year. And, if you look at what Devontae did, for Kupp to actually do better than that and have one of the best receiving seasons of all time is something that's incredible. The other thing the Rams have going for them is that they put the highest pressure rate on Brady all season during their game in week 3. And so you look at and obviously they've got this incredible defensive line. They've gone all in as far as trying to win the season. And so there's everything that says that this is the team that should do it. They've got a better receiving core. They've got a better defensive line. And yet they have Matthew Stafford. And I just cannot pick Matthew Stafford in the playoffs. I'm picking the Bucs to win this game.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to be the contrarian here. I'm going to go with the Rams. And here's why. I want to see a 44-year-old Tom Brady. I want to see him get sacked. And when the clock in Tom's head speeds up, he has a tendency to be a really pedestrian or worse, terrible quarterback. And with the injuries that were sustained last week, over that Philadelphia win, they got dinged pretty good on the offensive line. So, like Neil alluded to, the Rams went all in. You've got Von Miller, you've got, of course, Aaron Donald. You've got these incredibly fast defensive players that want it. These guys have not been to a championship. Well, Von Miller has, and he knows what it's like. And so I'm sure he's in their ear saying, okay, here's our chance. So I think that it's going to be, yes, I think Matthew Stafford will be a game manager if, in this game. And, I'm just going to go out there and say, if they can rattle, if the defensive line can really get in Tom's head, get him on skates out there, get him thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get killed out here. He's going to throw some shitty balls and some picks, and there will be, I'm going to say there'll be at least one defensive score in this game, and the Rams are going to win.
That's a bold prediction, Jeff. I look forward to watching that game with you. All right, Sunday, 5:30, the 2 teams with the 2 highest scoring teams of last weekend combined 89 points between the Bills and the Chiefs. So the Bills with the 3 seed, Chiefs the 2 seed. It wraps up in Kansas City on Sunday. This one is close to a pick'em game as it can be. The Chiefs at last check favored by 2. Only a 2-point spread on this one. Jeff, you talked a lot about the last game. Let's let you take this one. Who do you like?
Well, earlier in this episode, I already tipped my hand. Bills. I think this is the same matchup as there was last year. I think the Bills learned a lot. I think they might have been, hey, we're just happy to be here last year. This year, they're like, you know what? We know what we're facing. Kansas City's good. They're really good. They're fast. They're scary. But you know what? I think the Bills just might say, you know what? We've had enough of this. And this is going to be their statement game, because I think the winner of this game goes to the Super Bowl. for the AFC.
Wow.
Bills Mafia.
All right. Neil.
So I loved what Josh Allen did last week. I've already said that. And they showed to me last week that they have taken another leap. It was like the Packers in the 95 divisional round when we knocked off the defending Super Bowl champion San Francisco 49ers and, showed that we were a team that was ready to take it to the next level. Are they ready to take it to the level to beat Kansas City? I think that they're in a situation where if the game was in Buffalo, I would pick Buffalo. But unfortunately, the game is in Kansas City. The Kansas City crowd is always considered to be one of the best home crowds in sports.
Road trip.
And I think that fundamentally that is going to make the difference in the game. I think it's going to be a close game. I hope it's going to be high scoring. I hope it's going to be a lot of incredible plays on both sides. And I think the absence of Bills Mafia in the crowd and the presence of Kansas City's home fans is going to be the squeaker that makes a difference in an incredibly entertaining game.
So you're taking Kansas City?
I'm taking Kansas City.
And you guys said all the right things about everything about this Bills team, especially after their loss last year. They opened up this season on a tear as well. And they looked like the team to beat. So did Arizona at one point this year as well. They did.
But Arizona doesn't have the playoff experience.
Right.
Didn't have.
Buffalo does falter late in the season. There's a couple of losses there you just can't explain. But I think last weekend for them made them realize they are a team of destiny. They put together what they wanted to put together. They accomplished what they wanted to accomplish in winning their division. They won a playoff game. I think they're feeling strong. I think that they have had this game targeted since last year. They are ready to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think it will be very sweet for them to go into Kansas City and do it. Neil, we're going to leave you hanging on this one. Jeff and I are taking the Bills. And with that said, we are ready for a bedtime story, a story that explains why the last 30 years in Green Bay were a lot better than the 20 years prior to that. And here is Jeff.
So Ron Wolf changed the Packers organization for the better. He was hired, and when he was hired as general manager, he was hired no strings attached. And at some point, we will probably talk a lot more about Ron Wolf. But Ron Wolf, one of the first things that he did once he was hired was to fire Lindy Infante. And once Lindy Infante was gone, and that terrible 1991 Packers season was behind us, he reached out to Mike Holmgren. Now, first he reached out to Bill Parcells, and Bill Parcells was turned him down, basically was very interested, but said he didn't want to come back to coaching. And actually he had turned down another team as well. Wasn't going to be Parcells. So Holmgren was a pretty hot commodity, but at the time, after the 1991 season, there were 9 head coaching vacancies. And Holmgren, he was on people's radar. He was kind of a hot commodity, but the fact of the matter was he was pretty young and inexperienced. He had been a high school coach. He had been a college coordinator for 4 years at BYU, 5 years total. He had won a couple Super Bowls with San Francisco, but he was kind of an unknown. He was a smart guy. He was a big dude, 6'5", 240 pounds. And he was really on the short list for Ron Wolf. Now, of the 9 head coaching vacancies, Holmgren actually interviewed, including the Packers, for 5 of them, and almost 6, because the Vikings also had a head coaching vacancy, but they were really, really looking to Denny Green. So that only left a couple teams left. The Packers, put Ron Wolf, said, I got to have this guy. And so Bill Walsh was kind of in Holmgren's ear and other folks in Holmgren's ear. It wasn't so much as, oh my God, you're going to go to the Packers. Really? It was, what is the best fit for you? And Ron Wolf, having had some issues with other owners he was very successful under Al Davis, but under Hugh Culverhouse in Tampa Bay, not so much. So they had a perfect situation, and basically Ron Wolf's like, look, we have the opportunity. We don't have a rich owner that's going to be over our head. We can build what we want. Let's hitch our wagons together and let's do this. Holmgren listened, and he was hired on January 11th, 1992. That's what this picture is from. So in the Wayback Machine, 1992, when we're all younger and much thinner. And you know, he turned around. The culture turned around. We'll obviously get into this in future episodes, but the bottom line, Holmgren was cocky. He was confident, but he cared the way he carried himself. And one of his mantras was practice smarter, not harder. That was a huge change for the Packers organization in early 1992, a change for the better. And the rest, as they say, is history.
It was also the first of 3 times in the last 30 years where Packers fans collectively said, Mike, who? But it still worked out. And I vividly remember a lot of people in Green Bay very, very upset that they could not get Bill Parcells into Green Bay.
But it wasn't because Bill Parcells didn't want to come to Green Bay. Bill Parcells didn't want to coach.
He
didn't for another couple of years until, ironically, he came back for New England and
we beat them. We beat them.
And hey, I like the way everything worked out. I'm fine with it. It worked out for me.
Agreed. Yeah, it was the beginning. It was the return to greatness.
All right, we're heading into town this weekend. Being in Green Bay, it's going to be cold this weekend, so there's not a lot to do. But Neil, what's a must stop? Like, other than your mom's house, where do you have to go when you're in Green Bay this weekend? Where do you have
the bed and breakfast? Mom's bed and breakfast.
It's Green Bay, it's Wisconsin, right? It's going to be about the bars, and the question is, what bars are you going to choose? And obviously, anyone's starting point is the Stadium District. You've got the trifecta. You've got the Stadium View, you've got Anduzzi's, and you've got the bar. And you decide, you plan your weekend around that, and you're in pretty good shape. Quite frankly, I've been coming back to home playoff games every year since 2003, other than last year COVID. And one of the things that I love about playoff weekends is going to Stadium View and seeing the opposing fans there. And the fact is, you always have fans, you always have respectful interactions with the fans. You love to see the passion of those fans from other teams. And to me, the Stadium View is the best place as far as seeing those other fans out and about the day before the game, when everyone has anticipation, everyone has excitement that we think this is our year, and everyone can just enjoy that passion for their team.
It's that whole area though now, Neil, that west of the stadium, that whole Titletown district, you've got indoor and outdoor activities. You've got a nice bar in the hinterland there. You've got the Lodge Kohler,
Sledding Hill,
the sledding hill, the ice rink. There's kids activities. There is a lot to see in the entire stadium district. The pro shop will be open on Friday for the people that are in town early. There is that whole area around the stadium is a lot different than it was 30 years ago when Mike Holmgren was hired, when we were in college. And it is definitely a fun spot to be. But, we're going to still be at the Lorelei Inn. Hey, if you're listening to this before Friday and you're feeling adventurous and you're in Green Bay for the game, have your Uber take you over to the east side into Alloway for the Lorelei Inn. Jeff, anywhere that you like going when you're in Green Bay?
Niels, if you're coming into town around the Stadium District, there's so many bars, right? It's bars and church steeples, right? So, you really can't go wrong in Green Bay. I don't honestly have a favorite. It's just, I know that there's a lot of great breweries in town. As I recall, was a couple years ago, I watched the game from, Neil, help me out here. What's the name of that brewery?
You were at the distillery, Green Bay Distillery.
No, we were in the parking lot early on.
Badger State Brewery.
Oh yeah, Badger State.
So Badger State is where I will be tailgating. If you want to see me, I will be tailgating prior to the game at Badger State Brewery. And yes, Badger State Brewery, they're great. They've got trucks out front with booyah and different
trucks.
Foods. They've got mobile beer dispensing. You can go inside, obviously, as well. Badger State is always my starting point as far as any tailgating is concerned, and that includes tailgating inside. And you don't have your own tailgate, there's plenty of action going on in outside Badger State and inside Badger State.
All around the stadium, all of the parking lots.
It's a scene like I said, there's very few places. John Madden loved tailgating. It's a place like no other.
It's like It's adult trick or treating. You can walk around the stadium and you can hit every tailgate party you can find. Now, some of the houses on Shadow, they have their private parties, but you walk through the parking lot, specifically lot 1. We're by the United Gate. We got a great setup. We got a shot ski. We make a special apple pie beverage for shots for game day only.
If you
But
don't
our
know what a
friend-
shot ski is, you need to
You will
stop by and
find out.
figure it out. Yep.
But I know people that I talk to them every game day. Our friend Dean, in fact, he has a loop. He gets into town, he does a loop all the way around the stadium, and they have a spot over, I think it's by lot 10, where they end up. And you can do that. You get there when the lots open up 4 hours before the game. 4 hours goes by pretty fast when you're bouncing around trying to find everything that's going on pregame. But there is definitely a lot to check out as you walk around Green Bay. So we're looking forward to a great weekend. Hopefully anybody listening to us that's coming in from out of town, welcome to our city. We love Green Bay. We hope you love it as well. You guys, any parting shots before we go?
Go Pack. Be safe. Well, looking forward to next weekend's episode, and looking forward to another victory. Hopefully, no, not hopefully, another victory.
John has forbidden us to say if, right? So
Another
No,
victory.
there are no ifs in this, Jeff.
That's right. Another victory. See you next week.
I'm looking forward to an incredible weekend because every Packers home game playoff weekend is incredible. And we've been incredibly blessed as Packers fans to have so many of these since Mike Holmgren was hired in 92. And I come back for all of them because of how incredible the weekend always is in Green Bay. Packers fans know how to bring it, and so do the visiting fans. And let's have fun.
I'm looking forward to seeing my friends in person over the next couple of weeks. Hey, we've had a long show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Get more information on the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat on Twitter and on Facebook at the GBC podcast Green Bay Chat. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Green Bay Chat, and may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.